vicino mare.
I credit him with the total revitalization of the city.
He's done a remarkable job.
Magnificent
He is the
job.
biggest salesman we've ever had in the city of Providence.
Federal Hill was becoming abandoned, and I give a lot of credit to Mayor Cianci. He brought about some federal programs with money that made it possible for these things to happen.
It's amazing when the politicians who want to be president make a visit here. I can tell you that there have been many who come to Federal Hill. I've taken, as a courtesy, I took the Governor John Connolly there to go to the restaurants and walk around to Joe's Market, Acorn Market.
Ask anybody about Joe's Acorn Market.
Geraldine Ferraro around there. We've taken President Ford there. And it's almost a ritual where anybody running for Jerry Brown, the former governor of California, now the mayor of Oakland, was there.
Hey, we say, hey, how you doing, buddy? That's the mayor.
They come here and they just feel they have to be there. And no matter where you move to, you're always from Federal Hill. There's a tremendous bond, a tremendous history, and a tremendous legacy. You can tell by going around the city of Providence. I've been mayor so long, you can blindfold me and I can smell the sauces of the different neighborhoods. I'll tell you what neighborhood I'm in.
You could literally identify family by family by family, sometimes by the various odors that were coming out the window, by what they were cooking in the gravy at that time, or how they were frying their meatballs or whatever.
So as you went from by one house to the next house, which were 3-family and 6-family houses, as you went by, you would smell the beautiful aroma of what they were cooking. You could smell the basil, you could smell the mint, the parsley, and the garlic. Not as heavy as people think. The Italians were excellent cooks. You could also smell when they were baking things, but not many because they wouldn't be baking on Sunday morning. But as you walked along, you would smell and you could tell what they were cooking because you were going to church, and that was usually 9:30, 10 o'clock in the morning.
I can remember the pushcarts, for instance, how they used to had so much pride in how they displayed their product on those pushcarts. It was something to see. It was colorful. It was an ambiance that you won't get again. It's an era that's past. That was Federal Hill when we saw that, when we went through that. And I'm happy and I'm grateful the good Lord saw me through that era because you'll never see it again. That type of atmosphere, that type of friendliness. This was one big neighborhood. Our doors were open. People came in. My father gave credit to people. People honored their credit. They honored their names. They come in and they would stand by. Their pride was enormous.
My father used to do a lot of work for these pushcarts, the peddlers, because the wheels used to break. We used to make the iron ring. He used to make the iron ring, heat it up, and then put on a wood wheel, pour water over it, and shrink the whole wheel together without burning it.
We had what they called the rakesaman. He was the rag man, and you would, give him your rags for a small amount of money, and he would sell them to whomever. You had the ice man. Would come to your house and deliver ice, and they would yell it through the streets in broken English or broken Italian, whatever way you want to say that they said it. There was a fruit and vegetable man, and I recall my grandmother, because she had kind of a bad heart, she'd lower the basket with the money in it on a rope, and she'd say, give me 2 bananas, 3 apples, and whatever, some Robbie, and then she'd quickly pull it up the side of the house.
And people came from all over. This was the mecca of shopping in the 20s, in the 30s, in the 40s. People came from all over to shop on Federal Hill, per se.
These peddlers, we called them in those days, were very good to the kids. They give us a peach or an apple or a pear or something, Your mother did some shopping, so okay, here.
That's where my source of nutrient came from, through the elusive and adept actions of my friend Umberto, known as Pumpy, who would go over and borrow some cucumbers or whatever on a regular basis.
We used to have the peddlers come by the streets, the fishmen and all that. And when the fish truck would come and stop in front of our house, my mother would go out by the fish. But if it was very, very cold, she would ask them to come in the house and she would make the black coffee with the anisette. See, everybody got along nice in those days, you know. And when my mother passed away, I was surprised to see the peddlers and the fishermen. They came to respect my mother when she was laid out. I thought that was very nice. She was a good person. We helped one another.
She was a terrific person. She was.
We've been in the industry, as you know, since 1898. We're closed down during Prohibition. However, at which time my grandfather sold sugar, he sold raisins, he sold demijohn, he sold grapes, he sold hops, he sold yeast, he sold malt. I'd say the second oldest business on the avenue was Shallow's Bakery, founded by Luigi Shallow. He had two daughters that are now running the business today.
My dad started the bakery in 1916 with his brother, as we said earlier, and hence the name Shallow Brothers Bakery. But when he became the sole owner, he retained that name. Before he opened the bakery, he worked in the kitchen at Butler Hospital, and it was in that experience that I think he came to realize that if he was to make money in America and be successful, he had to own his own business. Our mother used to go downtown, and for, in those days, lack of a babysitter, they used to get the big mixing bowls and put us in those mixing bowls and put us in an area where they could keep an eye on us. So, you know, we sort of probably, through osmosis, absorbed a little of what was going on in the shop at that time.
And then there's Joe's Acorn, that unfortunately is only on its second generation. Joe DiGiulio Sr., who founded it, died at the age of 99, I believe. And there's nobody coming in. Or at least I have the fourth generation here in place already. We happen to have the largest selection of Italian wines in the United States.
I intend to take what my father's teaching me over the last 5 or 6 years, which hopefully he'll continue to teach me over the next several years.
And the fourth generation is now working here.
And just carry that on to a next generation, have a child of my own someday, take over the family business.
My name is Joe DiGiulio. I was born and brought up here on Federal Hill. I was weaned right here in the store at Joe's Acorn Market. My father and mother basically started this store in 1921. We still believe in the old traditions. I have, you know, meats still cut to order. We still cut on the block, the old-fashioned style. The chopping block is really a story of its own. It is the original chopping block my father started in when he started on Acorn Street, and he brought it with him here. That's my father's block. He worked on this for 85 years. That itself is priceless. I like to have a penny a pound for every pound of meat that was cut on this block. It could tell a story. If you notice the block how it's beveled, that's because of the many years of wear and tear. Sure. And how we had to build it up a couple of times. Because as you work on it, you know, you wear it down, so you had to build it up a couple of times. But that's a historical block. That block goes back to maybe around 85 years. That's an original. I wanted you to see that. We're proud of that. At this time, I have my brother Jerry with me. He has taken over more of the responsibilities for the business. I assist him, and hopefully we're going to hear for many, many more years.
A big supermarket was on Bond Street. It was a converted two-car garage. It was called Miletta's Market. It's still there as a garage. Actually, it's a one-car garage. The The big supermarkets made a dramatic change in Federal Hill, because all those little charming stores where people would go shopping. For example, my mother would walk up Federal Hill because she had to buy her pastry at Shallow's Bakery. She had to buy her chickens at a certain store, Antonelli's. And she had to get her fruit at somewhere else. So when the supermarkets, like everything else, they came in, they ate up the business. Then, we went through this real down period where Federal Hill, if you go to Battles Avenue, many of the stores were closed, and the businessmen were having these meetings, what are we going to do? And then all of a sudden, this renaissance. And it's very tough to point your finger on how it happened, but it just happened. There was confidence in the city, the economy was good, an upscale restaurant opened, then another one opened, and that just, just fed on itself. And today, it's just wonderful to see people up here go to all these fancy restaurants.
The one that I remember the most is Angelo's restaurant. You remember, Angelo's on? Well, that was on the next corner now. There's no building there. On the corner of Atlas Avenue and Bond Street, right there. Now, when we came from school, we had to come through Bond Street for me to go on Jones Street to go home. And you'd always get this aroma of sauce, nice, and so on and so forth. And this owner, the original, Angelo, and his wife used to help with the cooking and all. He was very good to us kids. And sometimes they'd have extra meatballs or extra, and he'd always make sure we'd have looking in the window, on the side, and sure enough, he'd come to the door, he'd come in, and he'd bring us in, and he'd give us a meatball sandwich, a little meatballs, or sauce and bread, or whatever, and it was always so tasty. In those days, Angelo's restaurant also catered to these immigrants from Italy who came here to establish. They were, many of them were married men, and they left the wife and children in Italy to come here to start to find a place, and they would live and they would boarder. They were boarders in those days, and they lived, say, a young couple had 2 or 3 rooms on their flat where they would rent out to boarders who would go to Angelo's to have dinner and the meals, and Angelo would prepare their sandwiches in the morning. They go by and pick up their sandwich and go to work.
During the Depression, my grandfather fed the people on Federal Hill for nothing because they obviously had no money, and that's how he originated the half order. He would give them a couple of meatballs instead of 4.
When I first started here with a restaurant, there was just 3 restaurants here. The old Canteen, Camille's, and Angelo's. Now there's close to 37 or 38 restaurants.
Hey, how are you?
Ordering 2 haddock Sicilian, 1 Eskimo, 1 penne.
When you eat here, it's like eating in your grandmother's house. Our menu here is predominantly Southern Italian cooking, but classic. One of the main reasons why this restaurant has maintained its respectability and the following that it's had over the years is that people will come here and have came here 25 years ago, and they'll walk in the restaurant tomorrow and they'll eat our tomato sauce, or they'll taste one of our veal dishes, and it's the exact same flavors that come out of that dish today as it did 25 years ago.
If you come in and you're Northern, we'll do Northern for you. If you're Southern, we'll do Southern. We'll do anything you want. And if you want Chinese and we happen to have the ingredients, we'll do that for you too. We don't put on the show with heated dishes and big covers on a small plate. We put big portions on a plate, and you keep it open so you can look at it.